It's true. We are live once again with Coffee with Humans. Today, an exciting day. Not only is it Tuesday in April, which means spring is on the way, reflected by this beautiful background, but I'm here with my new friend Sonja. Sonja, welcome to Coffee with Humans.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited.
Me
Now,
too.
we know each other through a mutual friend, and then
Yeah.
you clicked the button to have coffee with me, which always boggles my mind. Why did you
Really?
click? It does. Yeah, I don't
Why
know
is
why people
that?
do this. Because it is, I feel like it must be intimidating to meet somebody or know of them and then be like, you know what, I'm gonna click a button and just
For me or
meet with
you?
this
Or
random
both?
stranger.
For
Oh,
both
I'm totally
people.
fine. This is like I'm good with it. I've
Yeah,
settled
I guess
in.
you're more used to it. This is my first podcast ever. And so you're right, but I don't know. My question is why not? Pretty much. I asked myself why not? Why wouldn't I try something new and get to know you better? So
Why not? That's good.
it's my
Do you
life
tend to
motto. Why not?
Yeah, I was wondering, is it kind of like your thing? You've just
It's kind
learned to
of
go,
my
hey, why
thing,
not?
yeah. I think that life's too short to not take advantage of different experiences and meet new people. Why not? It's
Awesome.
harmless.
Generally, yes.
I hope so.
I've met some people that I was like, oof, wish I could take that back.
Oh no.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I think the last time we met, uh you somehow you got banana bread
Yeah, so actually, if we go way back,
way back.
banana bread. Who doesn't love a good loaf of banana bread?
I love banana bread.
Actually, if we go way back when I met you, so our mutual friend is my neighbor.
Mm.
And I had met our neighbor before meeting you. And somehow, with meeting my new neighbor, we started talking about banana bread because I don't know how. Somehow it got brought into discussion that he likes to make banana bread. So I had like bananas that were ready to be made in banana bread, but I didn't have a blender. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna bring these rotten bananas over to my neighbor. Be like, here's some bananas to make some banana bread. And that's when I met you because you were sitting there with um, our common friend. And I was just like that neighbor knocking on the door, like, hey, here's some rotten bananas if you want to make banana bread, which I fully intended as a nice gesture. Pretty weird when you think about it right now, talking through it. But like, it was weird, like handing rotten bananas over to someone because then it got even weirder because then he thought that I was giving him rotten bananas for him to make banana bread for me. But really, I was just trying to be like that nice new neighbor, like in clutch, here's some bananas for you. Like I wasn't giving away something, hoping to get something back in return. Moral of the story. And yeah, so we shouldn't name the chat banana bread, really.
That probably
That's our main mutual
probably would have been good.
connection. Rotten bananas brought us
Rotten
together.
bananas.
Yeah, cheers to that with our
You
coffee.
know, so here, I mean, here's something interesting about rotten bananas. Rotten
Mm-hmm.
bananas are sweeter than regular bananas because the starches actually convert to sugars, and so when it gets all mushy and gooey, there's actually more sugar in there, which I feel like I don't know how I'm tying this in. I feel
Okay.
like I should tie this into something like, as people age and relationships age, they can become sweeter because, the I don't know. That's all.
I like that connection there. I never thought about that till you brought it up, and that's
It
very
was
true.
overreaching. It was
Yeah,
it was it
very
was maybe a
true.
little too much.
Well, you know, they brought people together, and I see where you're going with it. I see where you're going with it.
Yeah. Food brings people together. So,
Definitely. Yeah, it's just kind of like brunch and coffee in a way without food. So, yeah.
yes. So I asked you how to title this, and everybody struggles with how to title
Okay,
something.
I'm not the only one.
No, you are totally not the only one. Don't even sweat it. Uh,
Okay.
I s- have done nearly 200 of these, and I have other podcasts and such that I've done before, and I struggle also. Like, what's a good title? What's all this other stuff? And it's interesting that the stress that people get under because I find it comes from one of two places. Either one, it's I'm not sure what's going on in me and how I might want to title that, right, to the world,
Mm-hmm.
which is totally that's like human nature.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is people stress about like what are people going to be interested in? what's interesting enough to talk about.
It's
And I
the
thought,
pressure of,
yeah,
like, displaying it to the whole entire world, I think. And there's
yeah,
something about, like, jumping on something like this, 'cause, without the camera, if we were just literally having coffee together, there's so much less stress in that, like, human nature-wise, I'm saying as the guest, because you don't
yeah,
have to worry about being recorded. "Oh my gosh, what if I say something wrong?" Or, um, what does the world think? When really you're only thinking about, like, we're not I feel like this type of thing makes people overthink what they're gonna say since it's being, like, published, you know? Whereas if we were literally just talking without the camera, there's that human nature, like, less stress there, because then it's like, I can't mess up. I don't have to worry about what all these people online think or whatever. Um, and it's always there to go back on, whereas conversation you have in person, it's kind of over with. And,
yeah.
you know,
I go
I
to
don't
the
know. The
20.
camera brings some stress, I feel like.
I think so. Absolutely. People get
Hmm.
all weirded out by it, which is fine. I go
Yeah.
to the 20-40-60 rule. It goes something like this, and I'll totally botch it up, but here's what I heard from someone else. So I'm stealing this and imparting it upon
Yeah.
to you in the world. The 20-40-60 rule. When you're in your 20s, you're like, "Oh my god, everybody's thinking about me." And then when you get to your 40s, you're like, "Fuck those people that are thinking about me." And then when
Yeah.
you get to your 60s, you're like, "Oh, that's right. Nobody was ever thinking about me." And I
You're like,
think
what
that that's
people
true.
wear?
Exactly. I really
Yeah.
do think that nobody gives as much consideration to yourself as you do.
Definitely, especially like the younger you are. And I think at a time when like it was honestly the worst for young people, like thinking about what other people think about them is high school for sure. I would
Mm.
say high school or middle school because that's when you're like, you're stuck in a room with all those people every single day. You know what I mean? Whereas the older you get, the you get to choose who you want to spend your time with in your free time. You're not forced to be with people you don't want to be, you know,
Yeah, and it
as
naturally
much.
becomes a competition, I think, in high school because you have a limited. It's a what's the word? A captive audience. So like people can't leave the four walls type of thing,
Yeah.
and all of your hormones are rushing around. It's like I need to be at least accepted, hopefully loved. I need to do a good job, and that so I have administrators and teachers who also need to somehow think that I'm okay,
It's
and I
all
think
about
that
like
puts a lot of pressure.
thinking about what other people think about you, really, when you really think about it. Yeah. Unfortunately. Shouldn't be that way, but
I don't think that stops though throughout life. I think a lot of people struggle with that pretty continually, especially now in the age of social media. When
I was just going to touch on that right there. Social
yeah,
media,
what
for
do you
sure,
think?
I think has made it worse. Yeah.
Okay, talk to me about that.
Definitely. Because everything's displayed to the world. Some things you don't even want,
Yeah, I've got a
right?
friend, great
It's all
guy.
about likes and follows.
Yeah, I've got a friend he's a great guy. Been
Hmm.
married for some time, couple kids. He'll go on an anniversary date and he will it's almost like he's live streaming it. He's not, but he's like, and here now we're here. And then they have a beautiful a good meal. It's like now we're eating this meal. And I and I don't like I don't I really struggle with social media sometimes.
Yeah, I
Um
totally get it.
because I don't want to be open to the world. I
Yeah.
do this. I do this. We'll get into a little bit. I'll tell you why I started Coffee with Humans and which is why
Hmm.
it's so far removed from who I kind of how I live. But
Yeah.
the one of the things was, he wants everybody to be along with him during this, what I consider a very private
A date.
moment.
Yeah.
you know, where it's just like I
It's
don't
like, who
even
are you
know
on
if
the
you
date
guys
with? The
exist.
camera or your wife sitting across from you?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's I think
It's like,
it's difficult to
is it really
balance
for the
that.
person or is it for your viewers?
Right. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I get that 100%. Yeah. Some people are very open, but he's not the only one. It's become very common. I
Yeah. Well,
mean,
you're in your young 20s.
yes.
Um and I'm in my mid 40s,
Hmm.
which I don't even know how that happened. It just boom, one day I woke up and I was like, "Oh crap. What happened?"
Yeah.
But
What do you
the
think?
it, it's interesting that you grew up and our we're all growing up still, but you
Definitely.
grew up in a generation where social media was already there, and I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
I have I have a
Bro.
book. I
That's probably
in
why you're
my
more closed
office.
off about it.
Yeah, well, I have a book in my office. It's an old US history book.
Okay.
I should it's not very near me. Maybe it is. No, it's not. Uh, but I cut when I was in high school, I cut out the inside of that book.
Uh-huh.
So like you stick it on a shelf, but you open it up and there's this big old hole in the middle of it that no one would ever know. It's like the secret book. And I came across this book the other day as I was cleaning out my stuff, and this is so dumb. And it's a bunch of notes, like handwritten notes between
Uh,
people that I was in high school with,
oh, so you
like
guys would like pass notes during class, like, hey, look at this
all the
page in the
time.
book, and really it's like writing to
All the
each
time.
other.
Sometimes it's
That's
like
so
2
cute,
full
actually.
pages handwritten back and front, all folded up into this tiny little nothing, and
You
I
got
still
like
have
some you
those.
got like some boxes, check yes or no, do you like me? Just kidding.
There probably
You
are
do?
things in there,
You
I
really
don't know.
do?
I don't know. I haven't looked at all of them because 'cause I'm like, "This is absurd." Or sometimes it'd be like this, like, little piece of paper would just be torn off, and it's like 1 inch by a half an inch, and it's just
Uh-huh.
tiny little writing on there, and I'm like,
That's the
"Really?
stuff you really didn't want anyone else to see. Like that book better not get to the wrong person when you slide that thing over.
Well, I read a couple of them, and it's like, Laura likes Jason over, Laura likes this other Jason, but he doesn't like, and everybody knows that so and so is the guy. It's just like,
It's
oh
like
my god,
all the
the
high school tea
drama
that you
in
see
that.
like written on the bathroom walls is like in this book. You need to
Yeah,
bring that to your next high school reunion in a frame. Give everyone a copy. Be like, in case you guys missed what went on the past 4 years, I got some of the history. Here you go.
right, exactly. That would be
It's like the
hilarious.
history book of the class of.
Well, it's so funny because I read some of these notes and I was like, I don't even remember these names. Like,
Mm,
apparently, I had a friend named, whatever, and I was like,
yeah.
"Oof, I don't recall that
You're like,
at
who,
all."
what, where, when, why? No, just
Yeah,
kidding. Got
but it's
it, that's when you need to
interesting.
pull out the yearbook. You're like,
Yeah, it's interesting that
oh,
our
that
like
guy.
when we would communicate with each other,
Uh-huh.
we either had to pick up the phone and you had to be home to like get the phone call, or we were writing notes in this little, four walled box, back
Yeah,
and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
yeah.
It was not this instant messaging where you could be along for the ride all the time in my life.
Hmm.
And I think it enabled us to be, as silly as these notes are, it enabled us to be present in that moment because
Oh,
that was the
100%.
only note we were writing at that time. That was the only person we were talking to. When we went out with somebody, that was the only person who was there. Everyone else were strangers. And now it's everybody's on all the time to everyone else. And I think
Yeah.
it's a little I think we've gone a
Distracting.
little bit overboard because we
Yeah.
take our relational energy and dilute it among people who are not even in the room. And I told somebody recently because it tends to annoy me a little bit.
Hmm.
If I'm in a close personal or intimate scenario, it's just like get off your phone because and I'm cognizant of it as well because I think if it's so important that they know what we're doing, you should invite them. That's what it should be. You should
Yeah.
bring them here. And
Yeah.
it's funny because I mentioned that at one point in time I was like, "Hey, you know what? Maybe if it's so important that you're communicating with this individual, why don't you invite them?" And the person I was with was like, "Oh, hell no!" And I was like,
Then why are you
"Then why are we texting
talking?
them?"
Yeah, and it's also kind of hurtful when you're trying to have like a conversation with someone, you know? But you know what? The whole thing that when we were going over briefly a minute ago about like back in the day when you had to call like their home number, not knowing are you gonna talk to their older brother? Are you gonna talk to their dad or their mom? Most likely you're
Mm,
probably gonna talk to their parents before you even talk to them on the phone. And
that's
so I
true.
think things were a lot more like intentional, I think is the word for I mean, it's not like you're because okay, think about it nowadays. Kids send a Snapchat and they send it out to everyone on their friends list, like 20 people. You know, you can never get a Snapchat and think like, oh, it was only sent to me. You know what I mean? Whereas back then, if you wrote a letter or you called someone, you asked, hey, can I speak to whoever? That's very intentional. I think that our society is kind of missing that these days.
I love that thought. That's I love the idea of bringing this idea of intentionality to relationships
And that
because
makes it a lot more meaningful too.
it does, and the And the words I use are like we concentrate effort. If we have 100% effort to give, we can concentrate that effort in one place or we can dilute it among all of the people. And I
Mhm.
love what you're bringing up, this idea of intentionality, because I believe nowadays we tend to be unintentional about relationships.
Totally.
W
And
They just sort of happen.
yeah, and it's instead of like it being like an intentional set of like two or three relationships, friend wise, or maybe one very relationship that's more than a friend, right? It's like it's all these casual little relationships all over the place, all over the board. And I
And
think that
yeah,
kind
go
of
ahead.
puts into perspective like all the apps too, you know? Like you got your set on Snapchat, you got your set on Instagram. It's really like a pick of the day these days. Like what you log on Instagram and you see all these bikini pictures from all these different girls. It's like, oh, who do I want to DM today? I mean, from a guy mindset, or vice versa. Um, and you got Snapchat, and then you have TikTok, and then you have Facebook, and every it's overwhelming, and I think it's very distracting, and when you don't pour your energy into just like your close knit of relationships that are really meaningful to you, you're going to end up with a lot of friends, but it's all just casual, very, like, I don't want to say not meaningful, but like casual and not as meaningful relationships. Like I would rather have like five close friends that I'm super close with and I can trust, they can trust me, vice versa, just super close with, than like 100 just what do you acquaintances, I guess is the word I'm trying to say, where you don't know each other that well, but maybe you Snapchat every now and then, you get that streak from them, whatever, Snapchat, like that's not meaningful, that's garbage,
Right.
right? Like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
I totally do, for sure. And there's
Quality over quantity.
yeah, absolutely.
And
I
I think
think
that was more what it used to be until we got all these apps, and now we got all these distractions, which makes a lot less meaningful.
and I think distraction is an important topic to think about in terms of relationships in one of two ways. And there's probably more, but one is when times get tough in relationships, the easiest exit is to go get information or an escape
We
uh,
didn't even talk about the
with
dating apps. We didn't even surface those.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I think
What,
people
one
just take an
second to download?
escape. Yeah,
Yeah.
the people take an escape real quickly because they're like, "Ah, I don't know how to deal with this stuff.
And they need a
Well,
new
I'm just gonna go over
distraction to
here."
distract themselves from their current distraction.
Absolutely. And then I think the other thing is sometimes it's difficult for people to go deep in relationships. It's uncomfortable. And so the best
Yeah.
way to escape that the real emotional intimacy, which I think we all crave
Yeah.
and need, quite honestly, in our lives,
Mhm.
um we then believe we like exchange that gold that we could have, and instead we are like, these 20 people all really liked this thing, and that must mean that it's pretty cool. And then then it creates this feedback loop of, well, how do I create more things that all these people care about,
Oh, for
when in
like posting
fact
online?
yeah, or like Snapchat. It's like,
Yeah.
I want to share this, and if you shared, I mean, if you shared something out on Snapchat and everybody ignored you, you'd
There'd be
be
no
like,
post.
hmm.
There'd be no point to sharing things if everyone annoyed you or
Exactly. And
ignored it.
yeah, and so there's this guy, Gottman, Gottman. I can't remember his first name, but he and his wife started studying relationships many years ago, and they become like the kind of the gurus of relationships, and so they've
Okay.
got some science behind this too. And they talk about these things as relational bids. In a relationship, we send out a bid, and the bid could be, "Hey, do you see that dog in the? Do you see that dog over there? He's wandering around." And if our partner doesn't respond, they didn't pick up the bid. It's almost like if you were selling artwork. Yeah, I have $1. Do I see $2? Is it $3? Right? If nobody
Uh-huh.
bids on it, nobody takes it. We'd send out these relational bids constantly. Hey, would you like to have coffee with me? Do you see that thing over there? What do you think? What are you doing this Friday? And we expect healthy relationships. People take those bids constantly. They see them,
Yeah.
not it's not about the coffee, it's not about the dog over there next door, it's not about what we're doing on Friday. It's, do you see me? Are
Mm.
you interested in the things I'm interested in?
Yeah.
And I feel like these relational bids, we're all doing it all the time. When we send those out to the ether to allow 20 people to respond, we're building these little connections all over the place and not going any deeper. We're not going to like when times really get tough, are you going to be there for my 3 a.m. call when shit's going wild in my life? It's not that,
Yeah,
it's instead
yeah.
how can we all just kind of placate each other
Or
and stay
use
on
each
the
other.
surface. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If they want to, they will. Just touch on what you just said. And we're, sorry, we've touched on so many things here. Um, you're right though. When people do send out those things and you said all 3 thing and stuff, they're not just sending it to you on Snapchat or it's just like it's surface level. It's a picture with nothing, right? And then whereas a phone call, when you call someone, that's when you're really talking and building a relationship with someone, friend or not friend, you know? That's where a lot of people have a lot of internet friends, but really they just send what a streak to them on Snapchat once a day. That's all they do. Send a picture and they call themselves friends, you know what I mean? But really it's kind of sad cuz a friend is supposed to be someone you can talk to and go to, and I mean, the talking part I think is also kind of like starting a conversation and actually having a conversation has I would say decreased a lot because of all the apps. It's just like, oh, you'll post it. And also, that's made people have a low patience level as well. Because it's all like immediate Snapchat, back and forth, texting. You don't have to call and wait for them to call you back if they're not home, or call and wait for them to be put on the phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These are
I
all
think
just ideas I'm
I think you're right. I
thinking
mean,
of as we're
your
thinking about
experience
this.
is interesting because, you've in these formative years when we started forming what relationships were, right? You probably had a phone, you were probably talking to people, hey, take my number or take my snap or whatever it is. And then
Yeah.
I was like, here's my telephone number,
Uh huh.
uh and then I'll write you a note. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it. And
No
it's
one
not
even
our
has a home phone anymore. I mean, very few people do. You
right.
know what I mean?
Yeah, we
Put in
are
perspective,
accessible
it's
all the
all cell
time.
phone.
And I wonder at what point in time
Yeah.
this angst that everybody lives with is in that it seems, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there's this low level angst that people live with nowadays, that I think is aggravated, and I'm interested in your opinion on this, is aggravated because we don't grow roots in relationships.
Ah,
We
there's no base
just
to it.
we're just wildflowers. We're like we grow and then you mow us down. And that's what we're doing with Snap to 20 people. It's just
Interesting. So can you explain the roots part? So instead of like meeting in person and being like going from like, oh, it's this girl I sit with in class every day to, oh, we're hanging out, we're going to baseball games, whatever, to, oh, I'm meeting her parents. It's just like, bam, I have her socials. I'm just gonna send a message right now to her. There's no building block. There's no built up like there's no build up to the relationship. And when I know we keep saying relationships, but I'm talking about like friend relationships, and everything is a relationship. Friend relationship,
I think there's
romantic
a
relationship,
I
work
yeah, I think
relationship.
this idea of roots, I think of trees, that when a tree is planted, Uh,
Yeah.
the roots, it depends on the tree. Some have these long tap roots, and some the roots go really wide, and the roots are as wide in generally as the canopy above. So
Mm-hmm.
if the tree is super wide up top, that's how wide its root system is down below. But it
Mm-hmm.
takes a while to grow that,
Mm-hmm.
and when struggles come, when wind comes to a tree, the it bends, and is that bending process that, number one, strengthens the root system because the roots go wider, and then also it strengthens the trunk because it gets stressed, and so it packs on more growth to be able to withstand the struggle. And I think that when we
Wow, when you
don't
explain it that way, that brings it full circle for sure.
yeah, it's all through
Yeah.
nature. And I think relationships and ourselves are much the same way, that if we don't go through struggle with somebody, we don't grow strength in the relationship. And when we can constantly escape
Yeah.
from from our current, the people that we're in, like, we're having dinner with them, but then it's like, oh god, this is boring, and I'm going to start texting. We never go through those times to figure out, how do I deal with a boring conversation? How do I
Yeah.
deal with somebody who's really aggravating me right now? How do I how do I go deeper with these people? Or too often,
Coping
I think,
mechanisms.
it's exactly. It's our typical coping mechanism right now is escape, and we escape in all sorts of ways. But I think in a very but small but extraordinarily meaningful way, we escape by getting on our phones and texting somebody who is not in the room.
You
And
know, it's really
that,
weird to think
yeah,
about. Sorry to interrupt.
nope,
We set ourselves up to escape because do you know how many people go on a first date and they're like, they call their friend Susie before the date and they're like, hey, if this gets weird, if this gets boring, like, I'm going to text you and you're going to call me and say it's an emergency, okay? Like, this happens. Like, before people go on a date, we set ourselves up to escape just so that we don't have to waste 10 minutes of our life finishing a dinner with someone, not enjoying a conversation. I mean, I get that there are like, if it's a serious dangerous situation, meeting someone for the first time, but like if you're just having dinner in a safe place and you drove separate and they're not like creepy or violating you in any way, shape, or form, like it's like really like we're but that brings it back to patience. We're that impatient that we can't let someone finish talking. It's so rude, actually. you know?
and I love that you talk about that, these, because I do think we set ourselves up for the very thing that we don't want.
Yeah.
We want to be seen. We want to be able to stumble over our words and say whatever we want and be silly and be dumb, and yet we set ourselves up to actually add the stress that if I'm not good enough, I already know I'm in competition with everybody else on your phone. And so I now have to be
Yeah.
on my best behavior to
True.
overcome this competition that I'm actually condoning, because you're kind of in competition with me with all these people too. It's a
Yeah.
subconscious thing
As
that we
both phones
program
hit the
ourselves
table,
into,
everyone sees each other's phone. They're like, and every time it goes off, the other person's
right?
thinking, oh, who's that?
Yeah. So I think it's no wonder that people
Yeah.
have anxieties and stresses that they didn't have in such quantity before, because
Spot on.
we don't have strong relationships.
Unfortunately, no. And that brings it back to it's all about the numbers. How many people can I like talk to for a second to get them to follow me on Instagram or whatever? It's all about numbers. People would rather like have 1,000 acquaintances that follow them on Instagram that they don't even talk to or know, just so it looks like they have a lot of friends, instead of having like five close friends that are actually like very meaningful relationships.
Yeah, which kind of all
Become a
circles back
numbers
on,
game, unfortunately.
for sure. It and you're subject to, in those situations, you're subject to somebody else who's the broker of your content, right? It's Instagram,
Yeah.
it's Snap, it's TikTok, or whoever.
It's
And
everything.
if that goes away, all of those relationships are gone. Like, you quote unquote
Ah,
relationships.
yeah.
Um,
Who are you gonna
and you
call then?
Right,
Oh, probably don't even know how to call you, just a message.
right, exactly. Yeah, it's real interesting to me, and I
Think
think,
about it if people lost
back to this 20-40-60 rule, the none of these people, the vast majority of these people, um, would not know that you were gone
no, because they're
if
all
you
just
just disappeared.
acquaintances. I'm sorry, but they're all just a number to you, and you're all just a number to them. Follow for follow, right?
You're one of a lot of people, and
Yeah,
that they're snapping that day,
and that makes you
uh,
replaceable.
for sure.
Yeah,
And no, and who nobody wants to be replaceable. Let's just be honest.
no, no. It's an awful feeling, but nobody thinks of it that way either when they're just
Right.
looking at their numbers,
Right.
followers and
But
stuff.
unwind the clock to when we didn't have all this stuff in
That was when you
relationships.
were thinking about
Like,
that.
if
Yeah,
it was that awkward date that you got picked up,
yeah.
from your house, and now you're sitting at dinner and the guy is a complete dud for whatever reason, just
Yeah.
because guys sometimes are duds and they need to be trained sometimes by other men and by women to, like, not be a dud. Um, the it's
So
true.
funny.
It's true. But it's true.
Girls can be immature
But
too.
imagine if you got stuck at dinner with that person and you didn't have a phone. You didn't have the escape
Oh my
call,
gosh, can you
right?
imagine? They'd be going insane. They'd probably go hide in the bathroom.
Well, you might hide in the bathroom, or you might learn how to get through it.
Yeah, because then you would have no option. You're like, I
You
gotta get
don't have an option.
home. But these days, people like girls are told not to even let the guy pick them up, because of all this crazy stuff, in the news and stuff. And also, we set ourselves up to not exceed.
Well, yes, and then I think it's I think it's pretty universal. Well, like a
Yeah.
woman's worst nightmare is a man who won't eventually take some charge of things. Um, and and
Yeah,
then
but yeah,
so you set them
yeah,
up from the beginning, and you're like, you know what?
yeah,
I'm going to set up scenarios where you cannot be in charge. And then I'm going to be like, why is he never in charge? It's like you told him
yeah.
not to
That's
be.
true. That's true. So you have a daughter, correct?
I do.
And
Yep, and I have two sons.
today's day and age, like, um, let's say your daughter was like, "Hey, Dad, this guy messaged me. We've been Snapchatting, but he wants to take me on a date and pick me up." Would you be okay with her telling him the address and letting him pick her up before meeting him? Or
I would want to meet him first, personally.
right, right,
I don't know
and
that she'd let me. That's up to her, but I would want to meet him first,
yeah,
100%.
this is stuff that like my parents and a lot of people didn't have to worry about. But now it's like it's all these guards up, so many guards up were kind of taught because of such
That's
things
not
as this.
but I mean, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I kinda
No,
do.
go for it.
This idea of guards up though, that we've gone on the far end of crazy on this because if so if a guy like if here's where it comes from with me, and I know
Yeah,
other guys too, and it all comes from the same heart.
yeah.
It's not because we want to control our daughter or she's an idiot,
Mm-mm.
but we know guys and we can and all there's so many women who are like, where are the good guys? It's like
Mm-hmm.
you are blind because you could have just asked the guys that you trust in your life, and we would have told you whether he's a good guy or not. Only you
Yeah.
don't want to hear it. And so if she brought a guy to me
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that guy, like I would sniff him out like real fast. And I
Yeah.
would be like, you know what? Here's what you need to be concerned about, and here's what you're like, he's okay. Or I mean be like, you know what? He's a dud. And and if you want to experiment with that for 6 months and then find it out, you're welcome to. But it's no different than with women. Like,
Yeah.
if all you women got together and you're like, here's you kinda know, like, "Oh, stay away from
Yeah.
her."
Yeah.
Like, and
Totally. It's an
guys
instinct.
yeah, for sure, and guys don't have that instinct with women, and women don't have that instinct with guys. You need the double check,
The outside
and
source.
for sure, and
Because
here's also another thing, and this is a huge difference between, let's
yeah,
say, moms and dads. Moms are concerned about what their daughters think. They're like, I want her to be happy, and I want her to be loved, and all sorts of stuff, right?
they're more
And
emotional.
guys are
Right.
like,
Yeah.
"No, I'm looking 20 years down the line, and I don't care if she hates me now. If
Yeah.
I tell that guy to get lost, I couldn't care less."
Yeah.
That she's like, "I'm mad at you.
Yeah.
You think I care that you're mad at me? No. I'm more interested in your long-term growth and health and safety than you being what, mad at me? Get over yourself."
Absolutely.
And
Temporary. Yeah.
that's why I think there really does have to be a strong masculine leadership, and I really think that that comes from the male mind in those moments.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Because then moms are like, oh no, what if my kid doesn't talk to me or hates me? They
Right.
go take the more emotional route on it. Whereas
Oh,
dads
for
are like,
sure. And guys are like, "I
you know,
don't know what you're talking about. She's
I'm
mad at me?"
protecting you. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I
Exactly.
already know that sometimes like guys do things we don't want to do all the time. But
Yeah.
because we know it's the thing to do.
Yeah.
And we don't care. We tuck our feelings over in the side. We didn't even know they were there. They're somewhere on a bookshelf. Like, have you ever asked a guy, "How do you feel about that?" And he's like, "Oof, I have no idea. I don't
Yeah.
know where my feelings are at. They're somewhere. I know that they're there, but I'm not sure what they are, and it's going to take me a
Somewhere
while to
under
access
many
them."
layers of
Yeah.
masculinity, quote unquote.
And
Whatever that means.
and we need it.
Yeah.
We need it because otherwise uh,
Don't
we
let your
probably
guard
wouldn't
down.
accomplish the things we want to accomplish in our lives
Yeah.
because we'd be too concerned about how painful it was.
Interesting. Interesting. So, do you think that that's why there were more high school sweethearts back in the day? Because like they had to meet your dad first, and your dad to like approve, like, okay, you can go on a date with this guy, or like after the first date, your dad's like, I didn't really like him, like I don't think he's a good guy. I mean, it's so rare these days. Maybe that's because of distractions and people
I think it's
traveling more.
I think it's because relational energy was concentrated. You could only be with one person at a time. On You were on a date, you were on that date with them.
Yeah.
And I do think that relationships were elevated to some significance. And now it's just like it's insignificant. You want to date around with 10 different people at a time, you're kind of like, well, everybody else is doing it too. That's how people excuse
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Well, everybody else is doing it too. It's like, yeah, but is that how you want to live your life? Well, no, not
Mhm.
really. I'd really like to settle down. Well, but all of your actions say you don't.
Mhm.
And
And
all
if
of
your actions say that to that person, they're not gonna take you seriously.
no, and and the other people who kind of know better, they look at that and they're like, "Brr, not touching that."
They're like, red flag, bro, red flag.
For sure. Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
100% true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and vice
and
versa
because there's easy
also.
escape, we never really know each other.
Mhm.
We don't really get down to the nitty-gritty and really know why, like, who is this other person on the opposite side of the table? Why is he so awkward? Or why is he so, like, why does he laugh at everything but he never gets serious? Or why is he too serious? It's like, who is this person, and what and where's his heart? If you were to point out, like, back to the, think of your closest friends and describe what their heart, like, at the core, who are they? I would
Yeah.
bet you can't.
Really? So, honestly, probably only like 3 or 4 because I only have like 3 or 4 super close friends who like, have seen me through it all, like who I honestly feel comfortable telling everything and anything to. So honestly, only like that many people I could. What
Yep.
about you?
Yeah.
Same?
I
But look at that based off how many Facebook friends you have or Instagram followers you have. You know what I mean? That showcases our point perfectly. We don't really know these people. It isn't really true. You know what I mean?
not at all. And I
Yeah.
have I kind
Surface
of have,
level.
for sure, it's surface level and we can kind of see things. I have a particular set of skills that, like, I can kind of see where people are at and where they could be. Like, it's always like I could see what could be out of you, like, in your life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I work with people sometimes in that regard, but the people that I really know closely,
Mhm.
it would, number one, I go into that very, very slowly because it
Mhm.
takes so much effort and energy and it takes so much time. And
Does.
I look at him like, is it worth it?
Uh-huh.
And it's not to downplay people. I love people. Just I this thing is called Coffee with Humans because I really do think that humans carry a particular responsibility and authority in the world to make life great, as however we can define that.
And we're put
And
a lot of pressure onto doing that because of social media.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's all
And
about what it
two,
looks like. Oh, make it look great. From the
absolutely.
outside for all these outside sources that don't even really connect with me in real life ever.
Yeah. But if we really concentrated our effort back onto those handful of people who
Yeah.
are with us, it's the
Mhm.
people that we could reach out and touch. It's the other people in our forest, right? If I'm a tree and there's a tree right next to me, I'm not worried about the tree on the other side of the world. I'm I'm worried about me and my tiny community here and how we're going to weather these storms
You're the
because we're the only people.
Lorax. You got to
Yeah,
take care of your community.
yeah. Well,
No,
and
absolutely. It's not like you can go island jumping over to a different community or vice versa with the internet. Go hit up the Snapchat friends based off the Instagram feed when you're bored,
yeah, and Snapchat and they are
Dating
all,
apps
it's all sort of, I don't want to say pointless, but it really is kind of pointless
because we need that.
nonsense that we just dribble out to all
Mhm.
of these connections
Most of our friends
rather than,
do.
yeah, exactly, rather than like, okay, how do I go deeper with the people that are my people? And how would
Mhm.
I know if this person should be my person or not? And
Mhm.
that's an art, and it takes
Definitely.
experience.
How do you think that you can tell someone's your person or not? I
Um,
think it takes a lot of time because
it
like
does.
trials.
It does. It takes time. It takes going through some stuff. There's a saying that, and this is suitable for dating relationships, but you never really know a person until you've seen them angry.
Oh, definitely. Like if you're only putting on your best face all the time, it's always going to be
Yeah.
great.
What happens when you really piss them off?
Yeah.
How is it then? And
Yeah.
you really find a lot about a person in that moment because it's either that person is interacting saying there's this issue out here and
Mhm.
I want this resolved because I appreciate this relationship. There's that version, or there's the other version of you pissed me off and you're going to need to correct this.
And you know what? That's why I was just talking to one of my really good friends the other day on the phone, and we she was telling me about how she sees this pattern with one of her friend with a few of her friends right now. And it's as soon as they move in together that like things aren't perfect anymore, like help me, how do I solve issues like conflict, you know what I mean? But that's because it's not, oh, we're going on a date Friday night, like I'll pick you up at 7, let's go. And you go on a 2-hour date with them and it's like amazing, right? Because you're on a date together, put on your best game face. You know, you don't have to deal with them Monday mornings when you're both dreading to go to work, when you get angry over stupid stuff like laundry or all that stuff. You know what I mean? But, and then so many people escape that and just run for the hills when it's like, no, like this is the point where you're supposed to grow together because you're like, you're living together. You're supposed to grow together because now you see each other 24/7. Whereas before you're not seeing each other just on like the good happy moments, like the hour date once a week on the weekend. You know what I mean? It's like, no, you get the person for like who they truly are in their rawest form all the time because
Yes.
you see them all the time. You know what I mean? It's not all picture perfect. Like, that's where you're supposed to grow. And so many people, instead of like sitting down and literally having a conversation together, such a simple thing, concept, really, and it's way harder to do than say, like everything. But instead of being like, hey, you know what? When you do this, it bothers me because of this. Something that you could do that we could do together to make this issue not be a reoccurring thing where you get angry or upset is we could do it this way. You know what I mean? Coming up with a solution together instead of just like, oh, you know what, I give up, like it's over, and then everyone like just leaves and you don't grow and you don't get to know that person any better either. You
Right.
just run on the dating apps or whatever. Do
Yeah,
you know what I'm
absolutely.
saying?
And everybody's on their absolutely everybody's on their best behavior.
On dates.
And
Yeah.
for sure. And that's great. I mean, I heard something at one point in time, this idea of if you treat your relationships as fragile because they are.
Yeah.
If
Definitely.
if that relationship, if that other person is so important to you,
Mhm.
then why wouldn't you treat them as they are fragile? Because you know darn well you're fragile. And there are parts of my life that are fragile where it's just like you got to tread lightly on that because I can take offense to those things because of, shit in my past.
Mhm.
Or, in relationships now, it's just like I carry into my relationship stuff that person did not
Mhm.
do, but it's just like, oh shit, I'm waiting for you to go crazy on me.
Yeah.
And that's not, and I recognize it. It's like, and here's one of the things, and this is where experience, life experience, I think can provide this. It can't. It's not a guarantee. But one of the reasons, back to your question of how do you know your people?
Mhm.
Can you say the thing you desperately don't want to say, and will it be okay?
And can there be
That's
no filter, guard completely down, no
and let people
expectation?
know that sometimes, because nobody wants to
Yeah.
see you totally unfiltered. That's not even fair. You don't even like yourself totally unfiltered. Why would anybody else? So, but but one of these things
No one likes a
is
puppet either.
for sure. But what, like,
Finding a balance.
I one of the things I bring now is, hey, you know what? I just need to tell you that
Mhm.
here's why I'm responding the way I'm responding, because, and I said, and it's like, and this has nothing to do with you, but I just need you to know that my my brain says caution, and you've never done, like, and you've never treated me poorly, or you've never snapped on me, or you've never done this, but I remember when it was that way, and I'm waiting for you. And we take these patterns which we developed early on.
From
Sometimes
past relationships, we carry the baggage into current
for
relationships.
sure, all the time.
I
This
see
new
what you're
relationship
saying.
is always new.
Yeah.
We're just
PTSD.
following the
Yeah.
pattern. And that pattern was laid
Yeah.
down as a very young age. So if you want to know what a guy is going to be like, look at his dad. If you want to know what a woman's going to be like, look at her mom. Or right?
So all these
Because
stereotypes.
it's not just stereotypes, but it's patterns. We learn these things. We learn these things at a very young age. So if you want to know, so let's say this. Let's say you got married and you had a kid. How do you know? How do you know how to be married and have a kid? Oh, who was the person
You go look at your parents.
who you were raised by. It's
Yep.
subconscious. You
What
don't
did my
even choose
parents
it.
do? Yeah.
You don't even choose it, you
Yeah.
know? And we know these things from very silly examples. Like my mom used to make this thing called sausage and rice casserole,
Mhm.
which is rice-a-roni, which I don't even
Sounds
know if
good.
people eat rice-a-roni, but I like rice-a-roni. Rice-a-roni,
Personally, I do.
tomato sauce, cheddar cheese, and breakfast sausages,
Oh my
and
gosh,
you
sounds
make it into a casserole. Um, and and I loved it, and my brother
mhm.
loves it. My brother's wife does not love that.
And you're like, "How can
And
you love that?"
and my wife at the time, she didn't love it either. She hated it.
Yeah.
And arguably it might be disgusting. I
Mhm.
don't know, but I grew
You're
up on
used to
it.
it. You love it. It's the memories for you. It's the sentimentality for you. Your mom made that.
I couldn't even pick
You were
that
raised
apart.
on
Like
it.
I don't have exactly. And
Yeah.
the same thing happens in our relationships. We get to a new point in a relationship and relationships are always new as we're growing, right? Because it's
Uh-huh.
like there's a new day and I'm going deeper with this individual or whatever. We're just following the patterns and unless we understand where those patterns came from, we have no hope of changing them. And
Yeah.
this other
'Cause it's
person in our
become a habit.
relationships the other person in this relationship's following the patterns too.
Mhm.
And so you have to look if you went back and looked at the patterns, my patterns, my family's pattern versus your family's pattern,
Mhm.
it's very evident where the issues are because
Interesting.
how often, especially when you're now, talk about living together, and it's like, oh my God, things changed. Yeah, for sure. Because now you're in these four walls that you can't
Yeah.
escape from. You don't even have the opportunity to leave for a moment and go, why am I so angry? I don't even know because you are still here. You're still in front of my face. Would you go away? Right? You don't even
Yeah,
have the
for them
escape.
too. Yeah.
Right. And so instead
Yeah.
you get on your phone, and you're like, he's driving me batshit.
Right,
Like,
right. And that's what instead of like oh, like it's coming up with solutions that work for you too, right? Like, oh, like are we both gonna go take time away from each other and scroll through our phones for an hour and then come reconnect and solve the conversation? Or is it like, no, that's not really how we should do it. Like, we should both set our phones down and just talk politely face to face to each other to really solve the issue. And then honestly, it's more relaxing for your brain to solve it right then and there. Just
yeah,
calmly
maybe.
and then go have
My
time. But that's a
maybe.
personality thing too, because someone might get
Exactly.
very heated if they don't have time to themselves first.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
I
it's like
I
knowing each other's temperaments, and you know what's interesting? I was actually talking to someone about this. Whenever whenever you get in an argument with a significant other or disagreement, you know who the first thing you think of it when you're trying to solve it? You're like, how do my parents handle arguments? How do they handle? What do they do? You know what I mean? And then the other person thinks, what do their parents do? And it's never the same most time. Like, what is a 1 on a million shot? It's gonna be the same, you know. But that's exactly what you're just talking about. We always go look at like who are raised by essentially, and
absolutely.
what next step to take to solve this.
100%. And we take the hurts even from those, whoever we were raised by. They hurt us in some way. There was some unresolved thing we needed. They didn't do it in the way that we needed. And then we take that into our future and we change,
Yeah.
right? We
And that
change who
happens a
we
lot when
are.
you have kids, I feel like, oh, I hated when like I remember being a teenager and being like, oh, I hated when you did this, like, and you whatever it is, like I'm
Yeah,
just a stupid example, took my phone away or whatever. Um, and then the first thing when you're a teenager, I remember thinking was like the first thing that teenagers think, I feel like, is when I have kids one day, I'm not gonna do it that way. I'm gonna do it this way.
yeah. Good luck.
It's like your human instinct to think that. So funny.
Absolutely. We all think that's not going to happen to us, and it does. And
Yeah.
it's just the way it is. And if you can give yourself a little bit of grace in that, and give the other person a little bit of grace too, and go, they're being nuts, and they don't even want to be nuts.
Yeah.
it's like then it's like,
It's
okay,
the
well,
emotions. It's the
let's try again
hormones.
tomorrow. Today went crazy.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, there's so many factors into it too. Yeah.
There are, and that's where I think, wrapping some of this relationship stuff up, and then we probably
Yeah.
should end this live stream. But wrapping this up, the I think going back to this idea of we are a we are an autonomous being, this individual in a forest of individuals, and
Mm.
who we plant ourselves near really does matter because it will
Oh, absolutely.
100% impact our future and our growth. how wide, how big can we grow? And how will we handle struggles, or how will we handle joy, or how will we handle, planning when somebody else comes through and tries to tear our forest down? That is super important. And if we don't go deep enough to understand, to really know who this other person is, then at time there will come a weak point. And then if we choose escape through phones or whatever else, then we
One
do
of the many
ourselves a
distractions in the
disservice.
world.
Right. We
Yeah.
create the reality we don't want, which is all of a sudden it's like, broken relationships. And those are tough because
Mm,
you know, getting new relationships as you're older is a bit of a trick, because you're not sandwiched in these four walls, like you were in high school,
right. With friends too. Yeah.
passing
Try to
notes.
solve the problem. Give it a shot before you just go try to replace them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a
Yeah.
time when you would want that,
You would want to be treated that way too, especially a lifelong friend you grew up with. Do you think you are who you surround yourself with?
yes, you are the average of the five
Yeah.
people you surround yourself by. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no escape from that. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, go hang around entrepreneurs. You want to be a nurse, go hang around nurses. You want to be a doctor, go hang around doctors. You want to have a good solid relationship, go hang around people that have relationships that you would want to model yours after. And you will magically just start picking up those things, because we are constantly in our brains, we are constantly subconsciously and consciously choosing patterns which we will follow later on in life.
Yeah, and I do agree with what you're saying completely, but I think that forcing ourselves to like I hate clickiness. I hate groups. Oh, you have to be this for me to spend my time with you, hang out with you too. I hate that. Like I think that surrounding yourself to other people as well, like not bad people, but like just other human beings who have different interests. You might pick up on an interest that they love that's healthy and awesome. You know what I mean? That's how we grow too. Is forcing
Yeah.
ourselves to go out of our comfort zone and not label everyone from the get go.
Absolutely. Well, that's a good wrap up for this. So I
Yeah.
told you I was going to tell you why Coffee with Humans exists, and for our new viewers and listeners, Coffee with Humans was launched in April-ish timeframe of 2020, right at the heat of COVID,
COVID.
when it seemed like everybody was disconnected, and even beyond disconnection, it seemed like people were becoming despondent. And I thought
Introvert's favorite
I
time.
Yeah, and I thought I am not going to become despondent. I'm going to use this as strength. And so I put one post on LinkedIn that said I'm going to have 52 coffees this year. If you want to have coffee with me, I'll have coffee with you. Just click the button. The only rule is no sales calls. And I filled up a couple weeks on my schedule doing one a day, and then subsequently it turned into almost 200 now. And I really do believe that humans have the capacity, responsibility, and authority to do three different things. One, name a future that does not yet exist, whether that's in our relationships or our work or for ourselves. We see a future, it doesn't exist. And then we can go about number two, creating that future by doing things that will bring us to that future.
Mm.
And then number three, destroying things that no longer serve us. We have the capacity to destroy for out of malice or stupidity, but we also have the capacity to destroy things that simply meet will not bring us to that future. They're holding us back. So name your future, create it, and destroy the things that won't bring you there. And when people get together to do that intentionally, I love that word. I'm so happy you brought it up.
I love
Intentionally in
intentionality.
relationship, then we can do that. And we have that responsibility and we have that authority. That's why
Setting
we are here.
goals. I love that. It's such a awesome idea that you came up with, especially during such a time in our history. Well, I guess it's still been carried into today. COVID is always gonna be a thing, I feel like. Um, that's not going anywhere. But such an awesome idea. I love it to bring people together, and it's such a simple thought, but like so complex at the same time because you're having all these conversations from different perspectives of different people in the world, and to come together and talk. That's one of the things I hate about COVID the most was not being able to talk and have real conversations with people face to face, just like so many people out there. Um, so I love this idea, and it's awesome and great idea, and I'm so honored to be featured.
Well, I'm
Thank
glad
you
that
for
you're
taking the
I'm
time to
glad
talk
that
with
you're
me
with
today.
me. And it's great
Hopefully
to
I
know you.
wasn't too boring for all you
Oh my
listeners out
God.
there.
You see, after all of that, you're not allowed to ask that question.
Right, 56 minutes later. I hope I'm not boring you guys. You're like, yeah. You could have said that the first 5 minutes, okay, girl? Like, sorry. Time got away from me.
All right.
Notice
Well,
that I didn't have my phone in front of me and time flew by. We should all try that
yes.
today.
All right. Well, for all our viewers and listeners, this has been Coffee with Humans with my new friend Sonja Ericson. Coffee with Humans is a playground for creative energy to make the world a better place. Join us next time. Catch us live on YouTube, Facebook, in LinkedIn, Twitch, more places. And if you're in the mood for it, head out to the Thinker Growth community, thinkergrowth.com. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Sonja.
Thank you.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls. This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.